Hey, good morning and welcome to Yeshiva YouTube Just Daf It. Today we're doing Nazir Daf Test number 9. We're starting a new parak, a second parak of Maseches Nazir. Let's get right into it. An interesting Mishnah. Harini Nazir min grogros min advela. He takes in Nazirus from, not grapes, from grogros or dried figs. Dvela are pressed figs. Figs are not part of Nazirus. Grapes are. Beishamai Omrim, he's a Nazir. He mentioned the word Harini Nazir, even though he got the details wrong. But he's still ain't no Nazir, as Zell says. The Gemara will explain why. He's not a Nazir. Amar Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda says, Ak Sham Rabbi Shama lo Amru, El Ba'omer Hareya Hein Alai Korban. Rabbi Yehuda says, Beishamai is not saying he's actually a Nazir. This is most Rishon's explanation. Beishamai doesn't mean to say he's a Nazir. It meant to say that if he says Hareya Alai Korban, then it's a neder from Grogos and Smukim, Grogos and Dvela. He can't eat figs with a neder, right? And all right, we learn in Masechus Nedarim. The way you take a neder is you compare it to a korban. So if he says Hareya Alai Korban, Hareya Nazir Grogos and Dvela, and then he adds Hareya Alai Korban. He took a neder. He can't eat figs. Okay, but he's not a Nazir according to Rabbi Yehuda. We'll discuss Rabbi Yehuda's Shita more in the Gemara. The Gemara says, "Harini Nazir min agrogos min advela, Beishamar min Nazir." Right? That's what Beishamar holds. He's a Nazir, according to the Tanakama, not according to Rabbi Yehuda. He's a Nazir. Amai Mikol Ashiyasam Gefnei Yayin Am Harachmana. Torah does not include figs as one of the things that causes you to become a Nazir. Beishamar Savri Lakara Meir. The Gemara says, Beishamar holds like a Meir. The Amar Ein Adam Motzi Dvarav Vatala. Person, when they speak, they don't say meaningless words, right? Most people would know that a Nazir is from grapes, not from figs. So, therefore, when he said, I'm not Nazir, any Nazir, we accept the Nazir's part. Right? He made a mistake, or he wasn't sure if Grogos and Dvela are part of Nazirus. But when he meant to say something, he wanted to couple something upon himself. So we take the first part, right? We're going to see Rameir holds, right? Tvos Lashon Rishon. It's Machlokas, Rameir, Yehuda, and Rabbi Yossi throughout Shas. Do you, when you say contradictory statements, like you say Hariza Tmuras to Olav Shlamim, you have a korban, and you say I'm designating another korban in place of the Ola and the Shlamim. One animal, the Tmura for an Ola and a Shlamim, right? An animal can't be both an Ola and a Shlamim. So it's Machlokas, right? Meir and Rabbi Yossi. Meir says Tvos Lashon Rishon. You go after his first language, which is basically what the Gemara is saying over here. Hareini Nazir is first language. The second language is inconsistent with the first language. There's no such thing as a Nazir from Grogos and Dvela. So we ignore the second part of the statement. We take the first part of the statement. Therefore, he says Tmuras Ola of Shlamim. It's Tmuras Ola. Tmuras Ola, the whole thing. According to Rabbi Yossi, you take both. We'll see in a second. Both statements into account. And therefore, you split the animal as half Shlamim, half Ola. You have to sell it, and half the money goes to a korban Shlamim, half goes in Ola. So, Ishami holds like a Meir. Person is not most Jorah Levatala, Tvos Lashon Rishon, basically. Fisilas Havri Lak Rabbi Yossi. And he holds like Rabbi Yossi. Amar Begmar Adam, Begmar Dvar of Adam Nitfas. A person, it doesn't mean we go exclusively with what he said last. We also take into account what he said last. It's inconsistent, right? The first statement, Harini Nazir. Okay. And then he said, Minagros and Dvela, so that's not a Nazirus. So it's an incoherent statement. We have to take the whole statement in totality. It's inconsistent, therefore, it's irrelevant, the statement. They're are each other, they're inconsistent with each other, so it's invalid, the entire statement. So he's not a Nazir, and there's no nether. So what's the Gemara asking him over here? Like Gemara already said, he holds like Reb Meir, therefore he's a Nazir. So I think the Gemara is saying, even we'd like to align Beishama, even the Rabbi Yossi, right? Sorry, Beishama Savilak Reb Meir. The Amar Eina Demosi Dvarav Levatala. The Chema Amar Hareini Nazir Havlei Nazir. Right, like we said, Tvos Lashon Rishon. You go with the first language, the Nazir. Kiga Amar Min Agorot Min Advela Lichuli Udegasi. Right, even if you want to assume, right, really he holds like a Meir, right? Tvos Lashon Rishon, Eina Demosi Dvarav Levatala. Right, so even though it's an inconsistent statement, it doesn't make any sense, contradictory statement, you go after his first language. But then what about the possibility, maybe he holds like Rabbi Yossi, right? Maybe he holds like Rabbi Yossi, and therefore it's Nidro Pisco Imo. Nazirus And Piscalimo, meaning the second half of the statement, contradicts the first half of the statement, and therefore it invalidates the whole statement. So, right? We'd say he's coming to take back, right? Shule is coming to, right? When you have a neder, you go show all neder, right? You matter the neder. He's coming to matter as Nazirus, right? Originally, he took an Nazirus upon himself, right? Like our Meir says, you give credence to the first language. And then he said, Grogus Veil, he wanted to take it back to Nazirus. So he said, instead of saying from wine, he said from Grogus Vela. We're going to have machlokes later on. Can you be show on hektish or machish an animal? Right? I say this animal is a korban ola, and then can I go to a rabbanim and say, I didn't know under certain circumstances that I had no money left. I had no animals left for me personally to eat. So I'm shoel on my neder, my korban. I'm shoel on the korban. Right, we learned in Masechus Nedarim that obviously you could have a Pesach, a Chakarata, and a Matar, and Neder. What about for Hektish? So Beis Shammai says you can't do it by Hektish. And similarly to Nazirus. Nazirus is also like Hektish because in Nazirus, if you become Tameh, you bring Karbanos. And even if you finish your Nazirus, you also bring Karbanos. So it's like Hektish, you can't be Shoal on Hektish. V'zil Savri Reb Shimon. But he still holds like Reb Shimon. This not Reb Shimon, Potashal is not the Gderachim is not. We're going to see in Amud Beis. Rabbi Shimon says, when I say hektish in a way that is not the normal way of being makdish something, like in the Nazirus, when Nazirus is a type of hektish, because you're going to bring karbanos, from Gorgos and Dvela, it doesn't make any sense. So therefore, the entire statement is incoherent, and therefore, you're not going to be a Nazir. You're not going to be a Nazir. Meaning, even though, according to Beis Hillel, you could be shoal on hektish, and therefore, right, we could say, right, it invalidates the whole statement, right? We wouldn't say that over here. We wouldn't say that over here. We would say, meaning, we could say that. That's basically what we said before, right? That Beis Hillel holds like Rabbi Yossi, but Kvar Adam Nitbas. You take the whole statement into account. It's incoherent. He holds there is she'ela b'hektish. You could renege on being a Nazirus. It could work. However, because he holds like Reb Shimon, this is a new shot, a new explanation. Before we said Beis Hillel's svara, Beis Hillel's reasoning is in line with Rabbi Yossi, that it's an incoherent statement, right? Nazirus does not include Groves and Vela, and a nether of Groves and Vela is not a Nazirus. So it's incoherent. We ignore the entire thing. Now the Gemara is coming on and saying he holds like Reb Shimon, meaning even if Beis Hillel would hold like Reb Meir, technically, it still wouldn't be a hektish, it still wouldn't be a Nazirus, because we're going to see Reb Shimon as a shita, when I try to be makdish something, bring a korban, if I don't do it in the way that follows the rules of hektish, we'll see, for example, bring a korban mincha from barley. A korban mincha is only from chitim, from wheat. It's irrelevant, your statement, we throw it off, because it's not the way you have to bring a korban. You have to bring a korban according to certain rules. If you don't follow those rules, the hektish is like a hektish betos. It doesn't exist at all. Now, it's very interesting. The Gemara sort of goes back. We had an explanation. It tells Rabbi Yossi, and now the Gemara is bringing Rabbi Shimon. We'll discuss in Ian of Ben Sion what the Gemara gains by adding a new pshat in Shitas Beis Hillel. Let's continue. Teram Beis on the top. Masisin deloki aitan. Our Mishnah does not follow the following Tana. The sign of Nasan Omer, Beis Shammai Nador v'Nazir. Beis Shammai holds when you say, right, Hari Nazir min agrogos min advela, so he could be both a Nazir and both have or have a neder from grogros, from figs, either or, right? I mean, you ask him afterwards when you say Hari Nazir min agrogos min advela, you ask him, did you intend for a Nazirus? He says yes, you're a Nazir. He said, did you intend to aser grogos or dvela? He says, no, I didn't want to become a Nazir. I wanted to just ask for fig on myself. So then we go after his words. He explains there's an equal possibility of being both. He decides. Beis Hillel omrim nadur v'ein Nazir. Beis Hillel says no possibility of becoming a Nazir. Like we said, right? Either like Rabbi Yossi or like Rabbi Shimon. However, according to Rabbi Nasan, he could be a neder. Right? Like Rabbi Yehuda said at the end of the Mishnah, even though Rabbi Yehuda was talking to Rabbi Shammai, according to Rabbi Nasan, even according to Beis Hillel, we hold like Rabbi Yehuda that if you ask the person afterward, he said, "Yeah, I meant to take a neder, not to eat figs," so the neder takes effect. Beis Shammai, so let's explain this. Beis Shammai is talking like Rabbi Meir, Rabbi Yehuda. He holds like Rabbi Meir, Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Meir says, right, you accept the beginning of his words, right? Tfos lashon rishon. Eidan amosi dvarav v'atala. So he meant to accept the Nazirus upon himself. Also, he holds like Rabbi Yehuda that technically he might have meant to take a neder from figs, nothing to do with the Nazirus. So therefore, you ask him. Beis Hillel savri like Rabbi Yossi. Beis Hillel is like Rabbi Yossi. Now, a lot of Gersos take out the word Rabbi Yossi, put it in the word Rabbi Yehuda, because really he holds like Rabbi Yehuda, right? It's possible he took a neder from Grog and Tvela, which is what Rabbi Yehuda said. Or you can explain it, if technically you wanted to explain it according to Rabbi Yossi says you take into account everything he says. And you also have to add in, he holds like Rabbi Yehuda also, that we give primacy to the neder. Lishna Achrin, a different way of saying it, Amri la Rab Nasan, Omer, Beis Shammai, Omrim Nador Ve'eno Nazir. Beis Shammai says, he only has the possibility of a neder, and not a Nazir. Beis Hillel Omrim Lo Nazir V'lo Nazir. Beis Shammai, Rabbi Yehuda. Beis Shammai holds like Rabbi Yehuda in the Mishnah, exactly what Rabbi Yehuda said. Beis Hillel is Rabbi Shimon. Beis Hillel is like Rabbi Shimon, that obviously he didn't take anything upon himself. Dan Hassam. We learned over there in a Mishnah in Masakas Menachos, Daf Kuf Gim 103 Menachos. Mincha. He said, I'm bringing a Korban Mincha, Lahavim Min HaSa'orim. Now we're going to bring my Korban Mincha from barley. Now, Korban Mincha, a voluntary Korban Mincha, there's only two types of Korban Mincha that are barley, but a regular Korban Mincha, a Nadava of a Korban Mincha, always has to be from wheat. Yavim Min Achitim, even though he says Za'orim, right, barley. He has to bring a Korban Mincha, he just has to bring it the right way, from wheat. Kemach, he said, I'm going to bring it from regular flour. Yavi Solas, he has to bring it from fine flour, right? It has to be, a Korban Mincha has to be from very finely ground flour. Shalom b'shem levona. I'm going to bring Korban Mincha without oil and frankincense. Yaviana b'shem levona. A Mincha has to have shem levona with it. Chatzi yisaron. I'm going to bring half a yisaron, certain measurement, a certain minimal amount of Korban Mincha. Yavi yisaron. He should bring it. The minimal amount is yisaron. Shalem yisaron shalem. Yisaron mechsa. I mean 1/2 yisarons, right? A Korban Mincha is an yisaron, or right. That's the amount. It's not more, not less. So he has 1/2. Yavi shnayim. He has to bring two separate Korban Minchas, each of an Yisara. Reb Shimon, in all these cases, poter. Shelo is not the G'yarim is not the. He doesn't bring any Korban. He said, I'm bringing Korban Mincha Min HaSa'orim. It's an irrelevant statement, right? You have to bring according to the rules of the Torah. The Torah says from the wheat. If you try to bring from the barley, so we disregard your entire statement. Mantana the Chamar Re'alai Mincha Min HaSa'orim Mevin Machitim. So who is the Tana Kama arguing in Reb Shimon in this Mishnah Menachos? Right? Amar Chizkiel Machlokes Shnuya. He says it's a Machlokes. Beis Shammai, it's by Shammai. La Amri Beis Shammai ki Amar min Agrogos min Advela havi Nazir. Achinami ki Amar min HaSa'orim mevi min Achitim. Right? It's from our Mishnah and Daf Test. Beis Shammai. Right? He says Nazir min Agrogos min Advela. Doesn't make any sense. You can't become a Nazir from Agrogos from figs. It's from grapes. Right? So you become a Nazir according to the Tanna Kama. Here also, right? You try to bring Korban Mincha from barley, you bring a regular Korban Mincha from Chitim. Rabbi Yochanan Amar, Yochanan says, Afilu Tema Divrei Yaakov. You can even say that Tana Kama Menachos follows Beis Hillel's opinion. But Omer, Ila Yisi Yodeya, She'ein Nodrin Kach Lo Nadarti. Kach. Right? He says, if I would have known, right, by a Korban Mincha, it's possible to make a mistake. Not everyone knows halachas of Korban Mincha. Right, Korban Mincha is a hektish. So people think there actually are Korban Minchas we're going to learn. A Korban Mincha by Sfiras HaOmer, the Minchas HaOmer, and the Minchas HaSota. I learned Masechta Sota, the next Masechta. Those actually do come from barley. So he made a mistake. So really he intended to take a Korban Mincha upon himself. He just made a technical mistake in what you bring it from. So therefore, Beis Hillel would agree, in this case, that you would bring a Korban Mincha from the Chitim. However, in our Mishnah, when he says a Nazir min Agrogos min Advela, everyone knows a Nazirus is not from figs, it's from grapes. So therefore, we have to throw his statement out. Elakach Amar Chizkiah. So, sorry. Okay. Okay, so that's what we have. We have Chizkiah, who says the Mishnah in Menachos is Beis Shammai, and Rabbi Yochanan says it can even be according to Beis Hillel. Now the Gemara says, Amar Chizkiya, Lo Shana Lo Sha'amar Min HaSa'orim. The Mishnah Menachos only talking about the Tanakam would hold if he says, I'm going to bring from barley. Aval Amar Min HaDashim, I'm going to bring from mincha from lentils. Lo Maisi V'Lo Klum. In that case, Tanakam would agree to Rabbi Shimon. You don't bring anything. So the Gemara says, Michti. Let's say Chizkiya Kiman Mukim L'Mastis. Who's the Tanakam in the Mishnah Menachos according to Chizkiya Beis Shammai? Dasha Gai Mincha Grogros L'Gabi Nazir Damu. Just like a Nazir knows, a person who's accepting Nazir knows that Nazir is from grapes. Everyone knows from grapes and not from figs. Also, Karan Mincha. Maybe you make a mistake that you're going to Karan Mincha from barley, but no one's going to think you can bring a Karan Mincha from lentils, right? So, if you're going to say, right, that in our Mishnah, right, Beis Shammai would say that, Beis Shammai should agree that by Adashim also you should bring Karan Mincha from Chitin. The Kari Beis Shammai have a Nazir. Our Mishnah, Beis Shammai says it is a Nazir. When Chizkiya said that the Mishnah Menachos says only when he says Sa'orim but not Adashim, Chizkiya retracted from what he said. That my Hadar Bey. Why did he retract what he said? The Mishnah Menachos is difficult to understand. My area of the Tani Min Sa'orim. Why did it say specifically? He said Kar Mincha from barley. Listen, Min Adashim. Tell me the bigger Chiddush, right? According to Beis Shammai, right? You go after, right, his Lashon Rishon, like we explained, Lashon Rishon, like Rabbi Meir, and therefore Harini Nazir. And you throw it out. So here, already I'm going to Kabbalah Kara Mincha. Even if we say Min Hadashim, right, we throw it out the second part, but it would be a Kara Mincha, and you bring the Kara Mincha the right way. Ella. So therefore, the fact that it says Sa'orin obviously had to retract. Ella Sarah Chizkiya Kiyamri Beis Shammai Hasam Kreb Yehuda. So Chizkiya must have held okay. So therefore Chizkiya retracted, right? So then who is the Mishnah like in Menachos? It's still like Beis Shammai, only he says it's only like Beis Shammai. So how did you reconcile this, right? How do we reconcile it? If he says only Adashim, no, but Sa'orim, yes. So how do we explain the Mishnah? Everyone knows there's no such thing as an Nazirus from figs. So, according to Chizkiya, Beis Shammai Hasam Kreb Yehuda. When we say the Mishnah in Menachos, the Tanakama is like Beis Shammai, he held like Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda, our Mishnah says, right, you have to take into account the possibility that he wants a second part of his neder also. So therefore, meaning like Rabbi Yossi, that you include the entire statement. And Rabbi Yehuda said in our Mishnah that even though everyone knows it doesn't make any sense to become a Nazir Grogos from figs, however, the statement about figs can be interpreted to be as a neder. And here also, the fact that he says, I'm being kareh like kara mincha lahavi min ha'sa'orim, so therefore, right, we take his whole statement into account. And we take his whole statement into account. And once you take his whole statement into account, so therefore, it's possible to become a neder from figs. Also, it's possible to bring a kara mincha, even though obviously you can't bring from Sa'orim, you have to bring from the chitin. Meaning, just to explain this a little further, meaning even Beis Shammai in our Mishnah, according to Rabbi Yehuda, would only agree, right, if he said afterwards, Yarelan and Nazir, Minagrogos and Minatzmukim, or Minagrogos and Advela, afterward we asked him, and he said, no, I meant to Aser, Torah's Neder, a vow, not to eat Grogos and Adarim. So here also you ask him afterwards, that's what the Tanakh meant in Menachos. You ask him afterwards, Harei Kar Mincha Min HaSa'orim, you ask him, what did you mean? And he says, I wanted a Kar Mincha, but I didn't know that it's from Sa'orim, so therefore you bring a Kar Mincha from Chita. That's what he meant over there. And Shimon says, you can't even ask him. We don't even ask him. So the Gemara says, Rabbi Yochanan Amar Afilu Min Adashim. Rabbi Yochanan argued on Chizkiya and says that the Tanakh would hold even Min Adashim. So the Gemara says, Rabbi Yochanan da Amar Ba'omer Ilo Yisi Yodei Shei Nozrim Kachlon Adarti Kach Elakach. Right. Rabbi Yochanan himself was the one who said, right, that we can't say our Mishnah, that he said our Mishnah could be Beis Hillel, right? The Mishnah in Menachos could be even Beis Hillel, right? Because by Naziros, no one makes a mistake to assume Naziros is from figs. It's possible to make a mistake by a Korban Mincha to assume it comes from barley. But Adashim from lentils, no one would assume a Korban Mincha comes from lentils. So how could Rabbi Yochanan say this? The Dvar of the Chizki of the Kamar, when Rabbi Yochanan said that the Mishnah could even be from Adashim, he was saying, not according to me, according to Chizkiah. At my time, why did you go back? Mishum delokasani min Adashim. Right, the only reason you went back, you retracted, is because you had difficulty from the Mishnah. Why did it mention barley? It should have mentioned even the bigger Chiddush, Adashim. Let me buy Kamar me Adashim, the Maisi Mincha Ma'al Yisa. I have an answer for you, right? Of course, when you say Adashim, right, you're going to bring a korban, Kiyam Adashim, the Maisi Mincha Ma'al Yisa. He brings a regular korban mincha out of chitim, out of wheat. Ikal Meimer Mahader Hu the other bay. But Tlos Hashem Rishon, like Beis Shammai always holds like a mayor, right? Maybe he's Choser Bo. He says, I really like korban mincha, which we assume is from wheat, and then he says Min Adashim. Min Adashim, he's trying to retract. So when you're trying to retract, your statements are contradictory. We go after the first language, and you're bringing korban mincha the way it's supposed to be brought, out of wheat. But Tlos Hashem Rishon, Elak Yamar Min Hasaorim, when he says barley, Vadai the Haki Kabar, he's not making a contradictory statement. Ikadsha Kimincha Omer. Oh, Kimincha Sota Tikdosh, Ilolo, top of Yidam Aleph, Kamashman, the Maisim and Achitim. There's possibility that he meant to say, he really meant to bring a Korban Mincha, but he wanted a Korban Mincha, Mincha Sa'omer, which is brought from barley. Or Mincha Sota, right? A Korban Mincha of Sota is also brought from barley. And that's what he meant. It wasn't contradictory statements, and therefore he intended it to be a Korban Mincha for Omer or Sota. And that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about an Adava where there's no Sota, and it's not Ted Zion of Nisan, so he obviously didn't intend to make it hektish shul. There's no Korban Mincha. Kamashma the Ma'ismin Achitim. Nonetheless, that's the Chiddush of the Tanna Kama, that you still bring a Korban Mincha from the Chitim in that case, because we would still say Tfos Hashirishan even in that case, and you go make a Korban Mincha the way it's supposed to be brought. That's the conclusion of today's shir. A little complicated shir today. I want to explain the halacha. I usually like to explain the Iyum Ben Sil's halacha. Okay, we hold like Beis Hillel. Beis Hillel, in our Mishnah, Daf It and Aleph, Hari Nazir and Agrosim Nedvela, it's nothing. Is it nothing? Or is it actually something? We actually, have on the top of Ted Beis, the Gemara brings different versions, Rav Nassim brings different versions of our Mishnah. Beis Hillel actually has Nadir ve'ein Nazir. There's actually, we paskin like this. The Rambam paskins, seemingly, that you could have a neder, right? Which is not like our Mishnah. The Mishnah seems to say, Beis Hillel, it's invalid, your statement at all. It's not a neder from figs, and it's not a Nazirus. But according to the Rambam learns on Teftanem Beis that it is a neder. If he told you afterwards, he said, already Nazir min agrogos min advela, and you asked him after, what did you intend? And he said, I just want to take a neder not to eat figs. So it is a valid neder. But according to the Mishnah, it seems like it's invalid at all. We'll try to tie this into the fact that there's two different ways of understanding on Daf It and Aleph, the Shita, Beis Hillel, Ian with Ben Sion coming up next.